Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us on this slightly warmer Friday afternoon. A lot of melting going on out there, so if you're on the roads, please be safe, be careful. There's a lot of water, but we're dry here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center for the 4 o'clock show, and we've got a packed lineup for you. We have some poetry, we have some faith, and we have some politics, so we're going to run the gamut here to kick off the weekend for you. So I'd like to now welcome my first guest into the studio. DeMont Holmes is a Providence resident, Johnson & Wales graduate, poet who is going to be holding a poetry reading tomorrow in Providence. DeMont, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your coming in. I'm sure you've got a packed schedule getting ready for the poetry reading tomorrow.
Yes, yes.
You're a JWU grad in tech. You're a tech guy and a poet.
Yes.
Tell us, how this came to be. When did you really start getting involved with poetry?
I started getting involved with poetry in, I want to say, high school, really big time. First, ironically, I have very horrible handwriting. So I kept practicing my handwriting, and eventually I just got good at it. And then someone told me, he said, "Hey, DeMont, you're good at poetry." I said, "Oh, okay, let me put it online." And when I first put it up online, I used to get bad reviews. Like, why am I getting bad reviews for? So then I just kept going at it and kept improving and improving. And that's when I really started writing most of the poetry in my first book, My Poem, My Riddle.
Okay. Why is it? What's the title? Tell us about the theme of it. Your poem, your riddle. What's really at the core of this?
So My Poem, My Riddle is basically the extremes of love. Love, hate, relationship, all of that into one. My first poem in it is called My Poem, My Riddle. And I wanted to challenge your mind on the variety of different topics concerning love.
Okay. And so that's the first one. And talk with us, when was this written? During your college years, just after?
Most of the poetry was written in the first book, during my college years. Prismatic Dreams actually helped publish the book. And Prismatic Dreams is through Tribal Rain here in Providence.
Fantastic.
So I didn't publish anything until I got here to Providence with JWU.
And what brought you to JWU? You're from New York. You were looking around at colleges in tech. Talk with us about the other side of you, the academic side, who said, where am I looking to go to school?
I wanted to go to Johnson & Wales University because I heard they had a tech program. It was away from New York at the time. I grew up in Southside Jamaica, Queens. And I wanted to try as best as I could to get as far away from New York, but not be too far. Providence was the smallest place. It was small. I heard great things about it. Nothing wrong with it. So I said, Johnson & Wales University is a big name. Everyone is going to know about it. So why not go?
So you came, you wrote the poetry, and you stayed.
Yes. Providence captured my heart. I'm not going to lie. Ironically, I started really getting into poetry. I didn't even get into poetry when I was in Queens so much, but when I got to Providence, I went to a Blue State Coffee House on 3rd Street every Tuesday. And they grew me.
Could bring it a little bit closer over here. Step back, and then just a little over closer. Thanks.
Blue State Coffee House, and then I went over to Cafe Soul on 62 Dyke Street in Oneyville, and they grew as well. Just the poetry community has shown me so much love and support. About 8 years now I've been performing here.
Fantastic. And let's talk a little bit, because your next book is about orange.
Yes.
So let's talk about the orange. You've got the orange shirt on. What is the meaning of the color orange to you, and why does it weave its way through your works? Oh, hey, kind of orange.
Yeah,
kind of orange.
I love the color orange. At first, I was just wearing it just as a color, and then it became so much more as I started going to poetry. So I was like, hey, you're wearing orange, and it became a brand.
Okay.
And then it became a symbol of inspiration to me. People would question them out, why do you wear orange? Why do you wear orange? Because when you look at orange, I want you to think of me. I want you to think of the color. I want you to think of my poetry. I want you to think of the brightness of life and love and happiness.
Fantastic. Well, can we encourage you? Can you do a little reading while we have you here in studio?
Of course.
No, can I stay here, or would you prefer to have the studio all to yourself?
No.
Oh, okay, I can stay.
So,
I can stay.
Yes, you can stay. The first one, I'll actually perform it to you then.
Fantastic.
It goes, trapped by the bars of my first high, I capture you in my sight, and my love for you expands as wide as your gaze in the sight in the sky. To atone for your beauty at first sight, I've imprisoned you within my eyes, and for the rest of your days you'll stay, and happiness will be your cellmate. I'll set you free one day, but that day when my love for you dies, so enjoy it now before I say goodbye.
Ah, nice one there, and you've performed that before.
Yes. That's just a sample for what's to come tomorrow.
And you're going to be at Books on the Square on Angel Street at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Yes.
You excited?
Yes. I have my books in most of the bookstores in Providence. Seller Stories, Ada's, Johnson & Wales, Brown University. Providence has just showed me so much love. Books on the Square, I will be there tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's very, very important that I support local. It's so important to me because Providence has to grow within itself. One of the organizations that I have helping me is Food for Good. It's a local food truck here. They will be supplying the food for the event, and they donate a portion of the proceeds that they get to the local less fortunate every month.
Fantastic. Food for Good. You're very involved with the community from what I read up on, and doing things to really bring the community together. And Orange Live. Talk with me a little bit about Orange Live.
Orange Live started as it started actually on Federal Hill at Cafe Pazzo. They gave me the opportunity to just bring together a wealth of community from Massachusetts to Rhode Island to New York. It just so many different talents, and then I took it down to Bowery Poetry Club in New York City. I did the same annual poetry festival to try to bring more people together from the community, and basically it just connects communities through art. A lot of organizations that I work with, they do that, like the Naked campaign in Atlanta. Deanna Liz, she does a mental awareness for rape victims. Blue Rose Foundation, another one here in Rhode Island. Love, Paint, and Chill is another organization along the same fundamental guidelines where they're helping the community within, and I just wanted to be a part of that and share that with the local community here. And as I branch out, I always try to bring artists from Rhode Island, from Mass, to my shows out there so they can get support, and then they support me as well.
And the community support, let's talk a little bit about that. Do you bounce ideas off of people? Do you run poetry by them and say, check out this latest writing? I mean, how influential has the community been here in your growth as a poet?
So much. A lot of the poets that I'm around, they inspire me. Rick McIntyre, it used to be Brothers Keeper, the Boston Poetry Slam team, AS220, The Spot, Lizard Lounge, like all these big places I've been to, and they all constantly inspire me. I just go. I sit down. They invite me to come, and then they just do what they love. And in return, I get to grow by watching them, and I study them. They are my heroes. Local people are my heroes. Like, I'm not lying. I love celebrities. I've met a couple of them, but the local people in my community, I hail them as my heroes.
So are you balancing writing poetry with work in the tech field?
Yes, it's crazy. I love technology. I started out as problem solving, fixing computers, and that's really what I want to do. Then people are like, poetry is very similar to problem solving and computers, ironically. You gotta fit the words in the right way. You gotta do research on a topic. If you don't know, you always have to grow, and poetry is always growing, it's always expanding, exactly like computers. Every 2 years, something is new. So it's very difficult to keep up with.
But it's constantly reinventing, and I just gotta figure your brain's firing on all cylinders between the left side, the right side, the front side, the back side. So you've got the 2 books published. You're going to be at Books on the Square tomorrow. 2018 is just kicking off. What does the year hold ahead for you in the poetry realm?
In the poetry realm, I'll be doing a couple of I'm working with, or I'm attempting to work with a couple of different organizations in the community to support local charities, such as there's one organization that I was invited to join, not join, but perform with or do a poem for sponsorship at one of the local colleges. Another one is for Haiti. They're having performing, I think, at Twin River, soon coming up.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, and then this one and a couple of days after my book signing, it's called The Living Room by Helen Dukes. she'll be doing. She allowed me to come on the show and be able to perform one of my poems, which is brand new. I have not read it or seen anyone else read it yet. It's about single dads.
Aha. So you're going to be unveiling that there.
Yes.
Is there a little difference between the written word on paper and delivering it in front of an audience?
Yes.
Yes.
It's so different. In fact, a lot of my poetry, there's 52 different types of written poetry. And I had to study this, and I learned that. And performance poetry, poetry slam is completely, it's its own separate form versus written. You can write a poem and it's not necessarily good to read it.
True.
You would understand a lot more if you had time to study and digest it. You can't really study and digest a performance unless it's recorded.
Yes.
Some of the greats, like some of the greats that you see out, Shakespeare, his is performed greatly, but it has to be studied.
Yes.
You have to understand Shakespeare, Maya Angelou, Edgar Allan Poe, all these great poets out there, Nico Giovanni, you have to study their work. And you can't study it, there's not a lot of performances out there of them.
No.
But you study it on paper first, and as you study on paper, you begin to grow as a performer. Now, actors are some of the best performers. My wife and son, I love them, shout out to them. My family, I love you guys.
Give them the shout outs while you're in studio here.
Yes.
So we're going to be looking to you for more poetry moving forward. But again, 3 o'clock tomorrow if you want to hear the poetry in action. It's going to be at Books on the Square on Angel Street at 3 o'clock. Looks like it might be a fun little pregame activity if you're looking for something to do on Saturday. But again, I just want to let folks know the books here by DeMont, The Touch of Orange, but the first one, my poem, my riddle. I appreciate your taking the time to come in today, and I look forward to having you here back again in the future.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope to see you guys. This one's 15 and only at the book signing will this be 20. This was published by Kingdom Enterprise, and the artwork inside was done by Shannon Suarez, a local in Providence.
Fantastic. Well, we love to have local. We're all about local. So, DeMont, I appreciate you taking the time to come in today. I'll let you go around the corner.
Right,
okay, thanks,
you.
DeMont. DeMont Combs, local poet, originally from New York, came up to Johnson and Wales, got a degree in technology, but has been moving forward in the poetry field, talking about the poetry community here and why he decided to stay after college, publishing a couple of books, having a poetry reading tomorrow on the East Side. We'll have that information up for you on our site. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for continuing to join us for the News and Politics Hour. We kicked off with a little poetry. We're going to move over to faith. We've got politics for you a little later in the hour. But I'd like to welcome Shirley Suarez. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
With the new Christian generation of Rhode Island, they are looking to crowdfund the opportunity to purchase the brick and mortar church in North Providence to have that facility for the church, for the members.
Absolutely.
You are the pastor's daughter.
Yes. Thank you for having me once again.
I appreciate it. Tell us the story.
Sure. So we have been established as a church for about 12 years now. And we've been in that particular building for about 7 years or so.
Okay.
And a great opportunity has come up for purchasing that building. And we want it. We want it really bad. And so we're reaching out to the community because obviously it's not just the church that's benefited, but our community is consequently benefited from us purchasing this building.
Because you do so much in the community now. You said you have over 400 members who come to this church. And the physical location is on which street?
It's 2121 Smith Street, North Providence.
But it is beyond just the walls because you're so involved with the community.
Absolutely.
Helping Hands, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we love our city, we love our community, and the way that we show our love to our community is through a ministry that's called Helping Hands. We feed the homeless every weekend, literally every weekend, doesn't matter the season of the year. We're down in Kennedy Plaza, and when it's rainy, we might be at Crossroads as well. And so we feed, actually last year we had a statistics about 4,000 people were fed, and not only food, but throughout the year we do seasonal events where we provide like basic supplies, even clothing for them as well. So we love what we do. Obviously, we always receive donations from local businesses, but church members also contribute for this ministry.
And as part of the ministry too, you also go into the prisons for Bible study and interaction with folks there. Talk with us about that.
That's right. Actually, some people from our church work in the prison, I believe the one that's in Cranston. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. Obviously, it's a blessing reaching out to specific people in our community that do not have the blessing and the opportunity to come to church. For a couple of years, we also did Angel Tree, which is a organization that during Christmas time we give gifts to the children of people that are currently in prison. So that's pretty nice.
So the big effort right now, crowdfunding. The goal I saw, 25,000.
Yes, it's actually a little bit higher, but obviously
gonna start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, we're counting with the help of the actual congregation, and so the remaining balance is that. And yeah, I mean,
go into the crowdfunding, putting your faith in God, and is it continuing to grow? Are people coming to the church?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously it is primarily Hispanic. We do a lot of outreach to the Latino community, and but we're open. We definitely have English speakers, and we love what we do. I mean, we've worked even with PEMA, which is the Providence Emergency Management Agency, preparing our people for disasters. You know, it's something that we just see constantly happening around, and you know, God forbid it would happen here in Rhode Island, but it's true. And so we do these trainings through the city. It's called Community Emergency Response Team. It's a training they do, and so we partner along with them, and we train our people for disaster preparedness. So.
But you are preparing to try to, again, do this fundraising, and you're kind of praying a lot, putting a lot of faith in God that you'll be able to meet this goal.
Absolutely. That's the idea.
But with the Pragmatic coming in, doing some PR, hoping that maybe someone out there, folks out there are listening to this for just how important it is to have that brick and mortar facility. Again, the church has been in existence here for 12 years, and you said at that actual facility for 6 or 7. Where were you prior?
We were in a lot of places.
Moved around a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We were in other churches. We were even in downtown Courtyard Marriott, different hotels. What was Wyndham before. So yeah, we've been places, and it's time to own. You know, we're a nonprofit organization, and so obviously we save money when we purchase, and obviously those resources we can use it to benefit our community. You know, use that money to advance what we're called to do.
Well, you're certainly a great spokesperson for the church, New Christian Generation of Rhode Island. We'll have that link up for you again, tell you a little bit more about the ministry, what they do in the community, and why it is they're looking to crowdfund to try to get the brick and mortar church there. Yes. So we appreciate your taking the time to come in today, Shirley. I appreciate it.
For having
Please
me.
keep us posted, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank
let's
you.
see you around the corner. Okay,
Thanks.
Shirley Suarez with the New Christian Generation of Rhode Island, a ministry in North Providence that basically impacts most of the state, talking about how through Helping Hands they come down here handing out meals on the weekends in Kennedy Plaza at Crossroads, going into the prisons as well, but they have been at a facility that they would like to purchase. They do have a crowdfunding page that they are hoping to reach their initial goal of $25,000. But as we said on the show, poetry, faith, now we're going to move to politics. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. We'd had poetry, we had faith, now we have politics. I'd like to thank Senator Aptakis for coming all the way in.
Pleasure to be here.
From District 33 to talk politics here in the studio. It's great to get members on the off days when you're not in to talk about everything that's going on up there. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about, we'll kind of move to the number 2 slot because it's kind of all POSOX all the time right now. Senate Finance just approved it. Going to the full Senate, what do things look like up there?
This coming Tuesday, matter of fact, we're going to be voting on this legislation Tuesday. And again, because it is a budgetary issue, I believe you need 2/3 of the senators present to pass this. So the cutoff point is probably going to be 24-12. If it's 24-12, means it passes. If it's anything below 24, probably going to have some serious consequences on that proposal. Plus, it sends a message to the other side of the aisle, the House of Representatives, to say, look, there was a lot of debate, and there are folks that are still concerned, me being one of them, that I still don't think that we should be taking taxpayers' money to fund, again, a private entity, which we know that the Boston Red Sox is a very wealthy entity. So times like this in Rhode Island, I believe that I don't care how much the money is, I think it's not a good idea to have taxpayers fund that proposal. And then again, as presently as we know today, there's also a proposal of putting this out to the public as a voter referendum. I mean, where does that go? Problem with that, not that I'm in favor or against, you got to make sure you have the specific, correct question that the voter knows exactly what they're voting. If you ask a question, should we fund the POSOX, they might say no, but it depends. They have to know the details. And that's the problem where we normally get problems with these voter referendum. Unless it's specific and the voter understands what the question are, what the cost is going to be, then they can make a good decision whether yes or no.
Where do you think the POSOX stand right now on the current legislation? And would they be open? Would they start pouring money into a campaign if it was a ballot item that they had to really sell it to the voters?
Again, that's hard to tell, because are they ready to depart Rhode Island? Are they just playing brinkmanship to see how the legislature is going to move on this question? There's a lot of unknowns. But I believe having all the hearings that we had a quick Senate Finance Committee vote. I was surprised that it only took 30 minutes. I thought it was going to be a longer debate. For those individuals, those taxpayers, those citizens of Rhode Island that didn't have the chance to go around and have that opportunity, at least coming to the State House, again, it's their last chance to testify on the merits of the POSOX Stadium.
And what are you hearing from your constituents?
Not supporting it. A lot of folks are against it. They love the POSOX, but look, we had 38 studios. It's just one issue after the other. by putting money aside, $28 million, $23 to $28 million, it's not pennies, serious money. You can put that money back into school buildings, into school construction, road improvements, a lot of issues. You can take that $28 million and use that for a good cause.
So we'll see come Tuesday, again, that vote. Wanted you sort of to parse it. You broke down the numbers. You heard it here, again, how it has to pass. You believe with 2/3 again for that because it is a spending measure.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe because it is a spending measure, that's why it's very important to get that many votes. And again, if it's tighter, it's going to send a strong message to the opposition and to the other side. Because I know on the other House of Representatives, talking to my colleagues, that there is a lot of questions. And even the Speaker coming out today in the media, his, again, more concerns, and then putting it out, the question is coming out, putting it out to the voters.
Do we get a sense? I mean, we do know the Speaker's indicated he wants to see it to the voters. So is it a moot point if we see this move forward on the Senate side, if they sort of take that step back, then what? The House has to introduce a measure that then goes to the Senate side to put it on the ballot?
What happens is the legislation that comes over to the Senate side, to the House side, could be amended and it could be sent back to the Senate side. But here again, it's only January, and the Speaker has also said, I'm not in a hurry. So you might not see this Poor Sox vote till June, till the last days of the General Assembly.
We've seen what happens with political footballs before.
There'll be horse trading, as usual, and that's what happens in Rhode Island.
We've seen what happens with the football. We saw it with the end of the session last year. I don't think it was much of a surprise that they took it up right away, given the fact that all of the hearings took place in the fall. That, granted, the legislation was introduced at the waning days of the last session, but I think folks were prepared for them to act so soon.
Right, and then you have the other issue about Worcester coming into play, another play. Look, let them come into play. We'll take our time. We'll make a good decision, whatever it is. We don't want to be pushed around. If they want to go to Worcester, tell us right now so we don't waste our time.
Plenty of other things going on up at the Assembly, one of which, line item veto. Going back again to introduce legislation, one of only 6 states that doesn't have?
6 states. It's
6 states.
Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, here in New England, and North Carolina, Nevada, Indiana, and the rest of the country that do not have it.
Is this, we see activists in the community, we see ex-gubernatorial candidate Ken Block making it his issue. Do you think the public understands the enormity of the issue?
In somewhat they do, because here's the big question. I'm very surprised that I've been putting this bill in, I believe it's the last 3-4 years in a row. Hopefully this year it might be the time that it's going to pass. But the issue here is those in the Assembly that are opposed to it, I don't get it, because when the governor vetoes either the budget or vetoes a bill, we can override that veto by 3/5 majority in each chamber. So what's the big deal about giving the governor that opportunity? Here's the problem. You got other states, and I'll give you an example, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I believe they can veto, they can change, if it's $25 million appropriation, they can take one number out and make it $5 million. Or they can take a word, they can delete language and changing the whole concept around. So I think you got to be very careful how much, when you give a line item veto to the governor, we have 44 other examples to look at to make that difference. So we caution again, but I think it should be put up to the voters this coming November. That's it. Time out. Give it to the voters. General Assembly, you had your say. Let's have the voters turn and explain it to them thoroughly. They'll understand it. And again, if the governor vetoes a portion of the budget, we, the General Assembly, can come back 3/5, override her veto on a line item and become law.
So let's talk a little bit about what's going up out there before we go to the district, the really nitty-gritty, down and dirty politics. But one other piece of legislation you wanted to talk about was leaving children in vehicles.
Right. That's another issue, dear. Perfect example. Hot weather. 2 vehicles in a Walmart parking lot. One has an animal, one has a child. If the temperature's over 90 degrees, the child or the animal is left there unattended for so much time, police officer arrives, first responders, police officer can fine the vehicle with an animal up to 1 year in jail and up to $1,000 fine. It's a misdemeanor. The vehicle that has the child left alone under 7, it's only verbal warning. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. General Assembly colleagues, let's get this bill passed. There's also talk about legislation a couple of days ago about if there's a child in a vehicle while somebody is driving and is intoxicated. They want to throw the book. They want to make it a felony. What about leaving children unattended in a vehicle? And this year, we've tweaked the legislation to allow police officers and first responders to make that decision, analyze the situation when they arrive, and determine whether there should be a monetary fine or charged as a misdemeanor.
So has that really been sort of the hurdle, the backlash, if you will, that some folks say, oh, it's a case-by-case basis, but for any amount of time, what is the rationale for
Sure, and that's why
passing this legislation?
And this year, it's important that we allow first responders, police officers to determine that decision, not us as lawmakers, but yeah, I think hopefully it's going to pass this year.
Okay. Another important piece of legislation up there. But in District 33, there is a lot going on.
Plenty.
The gun range. What's going on?
We have a proposal of a gun range. Now, Coventry does have an indoor gun range. No problem whatsoever. Everybody's satisfied. They abide by all the rules and regulations. Nobody has said anything about it. It's been there for at least 5 years. All of a sudden, we got a proposal of an outdoor range near an elementary school, near homes. I've got a problem with that. I don't want to take the chance. I don't care what the developer says, state-of-the-art protection, safety. No, we're not going to take the chance. We have children that attend that school. We have parents that visit that school, residents that live in the area. We're not going to take the chance to have one mistake where someone could be injured, and we don't want a life-threatening situation. It does not belong there. And what's interesting is there was something similar in North Carolina where a gun range in a 500-acre tract got defeated. And North Carolina is a very important state that is probably pro-NRA, and it got defeated there. So I think a gun range belongs way out in the country. There's a gun range out in Exeter, no problems whatsoever. Keep it away from elementary schools and residents. We're not going to take that chance.
Again, how close to schools and residences is this proposed?
It's about, look, there's a lot of issues with noise. I believe it's about a mile away. But let me tell you something. It doesn't matter if it's a mile away. You've got caliber bullets that can travel 2 miles. Noise. Are we going to start scaring children while folks are shooting off their rifles and the noise? There's a quality of life involved. So I believe that looking at all the evidence, I'm opposed to it. I know my colleague, Representative Serp, is opposed to it, and many of the Coventry members of the General Assembly are opposed to it. So it doesn't belong there. Strong message to the developer. It's been already delayed once, twice, 3 times. I hope the final delay is permanent and it doesn't go any further.
Do we have a sense on time frame? When's the next?
Well, it was supposed to be Wednesday night. It got delayed again because of the developer was ill. Now we're probably not looking till April.
Oh, wow. A few months here between here and there.
And the other issue, too, is Coventry, we get 2. We get the sewer issue.
The sewer issue.
Oh, that's another one. There's a lot of publicity on that one. A lot of outcry because here's a system, $23 million for only 600 residents or businesses. Doesn't make any sense. It went from a 6,000 fee of a sewer tie-in, a fee, to $32,000. What is going on here? It's out of control. The General Assembly we've had enough. We went to so many meetings. The town council still doesn't get it. They just hired a consulting company to consult, not to audit. So all 8 members of the General Assembly are asking the Auditor General to do a forensic audit. I think that's very important. Look, if there's nothing to hide, like the town manager said, that's fine. We want to get to the bottom of it. Why so much money was spent, and why? And I refer to it as a Ponzi scheme, because what they're doing is they're increasing the sewer assessment fee, and they're not getting anywhere. There wasn't a master plan to say, let's do the commercial base, let's do these streets that really need it. There wasn't a grand master plan. It's a pick and choose. We got one neighborhood on one side of Coventry, all of a sudden another side, a neighborhood. It doesn't make any sense. Not a very well thought out process, especially where it's going to cost thousands of dollars to homeowners, especially some of the needy, some of the elderly. We've got an elderly person, $90,000 home. She's going to pay $32,000 in sewer assessments. How?
That seems nearly impossible. But is the next hurdle for you then to get the Auditor General to take a look
It's already in. The letter has already been sent to the Auditor General on Wednesday by email, by regular mail, and it's ready to go. We're just being all 8 members and 2 members of the town council that signed on to the letter. I think we're gonna get, it's a serious issue, and I believe hopefully that the Auditor General will take a look at the evidence, look at the facts, and go forth with this audit. And he's audited cities and towns before. It's not just state entities.
So, not reinventing the wheel over here, but you want him to
Exactly.
take
Correct.
a look at these numbers.
Correct.
What else is on the docket, Senator, moving forward that you want folks to know about while you're here in studio?
I think that's on my docket. I mean, that's,
we cross off every issue.
exactly. We've covered a lot, but I think basically the other question is the budget. I
Yep.
mean, we're looking at a $200 million deficit. You know, you can look at again, where is minimum wage going in the future? We know right now it just went up to 10.10. It's going to go to 10.50 next year. Again, keeping small business in Rhode Island. They are the backbone of this state. And let's work with small business, not to harm them, not to move out of Rhode Island, encourage them to stay, bring more in. And I think those are probably a lot of the issues. Budget, minimum wage, again, like we said, the Paw Sox, line item veto. Drunk driving is another one. We've had an increase in drunk driving, and that's serious. We got to get serious with package. I got another package of DUI bills. Get serious. Don't let somebody get behind the wheel that's been already convicted of a DUI on a suspended license. I have one bill. Guess what you do? You catch them, you pull the license off the plate of the vehicle. Can't use the vehicle. I don't care if it's a vehicle used in the family or you borrow the vehicle. You can't drink and drive after you've been convicted, arrested, caught, and convicted. That's hard to do in Rhode Island. So basically, we're going to have to get tough on DUIs. Too many out there in the streets. Too many innocent victims are being hurt. We lose too many people in the state of Rhode Island, and that's unacceptable.
Final question for you while I have you here, Senator. Is marijuana just sort of dead on arrival right now, especially from what we're seeing in Washington, D.C.? With D.C., with marijuana, with what Sessions was saying, with the feds having the ultimate
Again, that is
say.
something that I think we're really going to take a look at. I know there's ongoing hearings, but again, it's an issue that we got to really analyze it. I know Massachusetts voters agree to it, but again, Rhode Island, it's in our community. It's going to affect us directly. Take it step by step. I'm a little bit cautious on whether to legalize marijuana.
Well, there's still a study commission going on right now.
Correct. We should get a report back. I believe it's going to be mid-April. They should be concluding those hearings.
So we'll continue to keep an eye on that, but all eyes on the Senate next week with the Paw Sox.
This coming Tuesday.
You'll pay for the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge of it. Senator Hrabtakis, I appreciate your
Thank
taking
you.
the time to
Thank
come
you.
in. I'll let you go back to
Absolutely.
the task at hand, and we'll be back right here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. As I promised, move from poetry to faith to politics. Just had Senator Leah Reptakis in. Now I have a familiar face, Representative Aaron Regenberg, candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
A lot going on. New Year's upon us, back in session. Everything's going full tilt. But let's start off with one of the issues that you've been in before that we saw some traction on this week. National Grid not getting the rate increase that they had been hoping for.
Yeah, I think it's certainly good news that that National Grid is going to be getting at least a smaller rate increase than what they originally asked for. So it's great that has moved forward. You know, Maura Healey in Massachusetts, the Attorney General, sort of began that call, and it was great to see folks in Rhode Island take it on. We're still talking about a $45 million increase for ratepayers going to National Grid. And so for me, you know, it still gets to the fundamental problem. We've got this multinational corporation whose fundamental accountability is to shareholders and a CEO thousands of miles away. I am going to be introducing in the next couple of weeks the legislation that we spoke about before around beginning that process to open up public power utilities to create a system where we actually have some community accountability, right, directly parallel to the folks on the ground who are most impacted by service and rate decisions, so that people can actually have a voice in those decisions.
And speaking of legislation that you're going to be reintroducing coming up, again, single-payer legislation. Where do we stand in 2018? How is this year any different than years past?
So January 24th, I'm looking forward, we'll be introducing our legislation to create a state-level single-payer system, sort of Medicare for all style healthcare system. And for me, you know, this is a personal issue. It gets really deep down. Healthcare should be a fundamental human right, not a privilege for those who can afford it. And we've made some really important strides under the ACA. We need to continue to work to defend those. But at the same time, we still have over 40,000 Rhode Islanders who are not covered. We need to be continuing to work towards universal coverage. And we still have a system that, you know, it's not a rational, efficient system. Over a third of every healthcare dollar that's spent right now goes to administration, goes to advertising, goes to billing, to say nothing of corporate profits. So that's why we still have folks who are uninsured, and we still have a lot of people who are underinsured who are paying too much for too little care. And so what we're saying is, let's take a page out of every other developed country that has a single payer system. When you look across the world, America has higher healthcare costs by significant factors and worse health outcomes. I think it's because we've got this profit-based healthcare system, and there's a lot of efficiencies that we can get out of transitioning to a single-payer system. So again, we're going to continue to push. We're going to continue to push for universal access, for universal coverage for primary care particularly, and for creating a foundation so we can have a more rational delivery model for healthcare in this state. Obviously, you're going up against the private health insurance lobby.
The appetite up there, there's a lot of money involved in this.
Absolutely. There's some powerful players, some powerful, well-connected lobbyists. But again, as I've spoken with you before, we need a state house that is working for all Rhode Islanders, for folks who can't afford a well-connected corporate lobbyist. And so we're going to continue to push this legislation. We're going to continue to take on the fights. They're not going to be easy. There's some uphill fights. But we need to keep pushing.
Talking about a fight that you're looking to take on is to address the high cost of prescription drugs. Now, the legislation that you've put forth specifically is an interesting approach. You want information from the drug makers as to the actual costs that go into making the drugs. Have any states had success in sort of pulling this information, and why is it so important? And is it even feasible to think that this could happen?
Well, thanks for bringing that up. I'm really excited about this legislation. And just to take a step back, this is an issue. You know, I've heard about it from my constituents in my district, the monstrous cost of prescription drugs and how it edges out other things in folks' budget. And as I've been starting to travel around the state more and more this year, you know, I'm amazed by how consistently across every community in town, this is a huge struggle for Rhode Islanders. I mean, people are dealing with costs that continue to go up every year for prescription drugs, which puts them in a situation where they're making these incredibly painful decisions. Do I get my prescription filled? Do I put food on the table? Do I make my bills? You know, I talk to seniors who are in a position where they're taking their pills once every other day or every 3 days. It's a moral outrage. We should be outraged by this. And a big part of the reason, and there's a lot of research showing this, prescription drugs, the basic rules of supply and demand don't really work in this system because the prescription drug companies, there's no transparency over the way that their costs and prices work. There's a recent study by the AARP showing that, pharmaceutical companies, they are going to have the maximum possible cost that they think the market can possibly bear, and public interest has no role to play in those decisions. We think that public interest should be a factor in that, and so I'm putting in introduced last week legislation to, number one, require some transparency so that pharmaceutical companies have to show where those prices come from. If there's particular reasons why things need to go up, let's see it. And then it also creates a mechanism so that the state can have a maximum allowable price. Now, we're not talking about having unfair things. Not corporations can make a profit, but at the same time, we've seen all of these situations where prices are going up. I mean, there's some of the extremes, like the pharma bro who bought a patent for a prescription
Is he
drug.
in jail right now?
He's in jail right now, but he increased it by a factor of 56 times, from $13 per pill to $750. So we see those extremes, but even outside the context of those extremes, we see companies that are going to charge as much as they possibly can without factoring in the real life impacts on Rhode Islanders, on our parents, our grandparents, our children, and we think the state has a role to play to say, no, we need to protect consumers.
So I wanted you to come in here to talk on these pieces of legislation that you're supporting and putting forth. But of course, the big item right now, we just saw the POSOX move through Senate Finance. Senate's going to be taking it up next week. The Speaker has indicated he'd like to see it on the ballot. Your feelings on the matter? Should it go to the voters?
Yeah, we've talked about this before, and I think that this is one of those issues where letting the people decide. I mean, that's the whole sort of message that I've had as a representative and with this campaign. We need to make sure that Rhode Islanders have a voice in their government. I generally think that that means that voter referendum is a pretty good system. And so to me, this is an issue that makes a lot of sense. It's an issue that I think a lot of people are conflicted over. You hear folks talking about, we value the POSOX, the impact in our communities, we don't want them to leave. And at the same time, we've got all of these critical public service needs. We've got schools that are physically falling apart around kids' heads. Is this the best use of those resources, particularly considering that it's a team owned by a number of millionaires and billionaires? Folks should have a say in whether their taxpayer dollars are going to go into that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
And finally, let's talk about the budget. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about what the deficit looks like this year, not just this year, but next year. There's talk about how the state's going to be able to tackle this. And talk about from your vantage point. I mean, there are issues that might have a price tag associated with them. If you're looking to increase minimum wage, look at things of the nature of spending. How can the state rectify being able to support programs that you're supportive and other folks are up there and cutting costs where they're needed? How is the state going to be able to balance this?
Well, for me, I mean, first and foremost, we need to protect our most vulnerable. I'm interested to see the governor's budget coming out next week. We've heard already some comments about Medicaid cuts. I get very, very concerned about that. I mean, that's a program that, it's working. Medicaid, you got to talk about efficiencies when systems aren't working. Medicaid, it's a big cost outlay, but it's a system that's working. Folks are in nursing homes. They're getting the care that they need. So for me, the first approach with the budget is we need to make sure that we're not balancing it on the backs of folks who are vulnerable, who are going to be most impacted. We just saw the Trump administration and the Republican Congress pass a tax bill that is overwhelmingly geared to giving a huge cut to folks at the very, very top, the 1%. Meanwhile, at the state level, we've cut taxes on the wealthiest Rhode Islanders multiple times. I'm going to be introducing a millionaire's tax this year that folks are still going to be coming out hugely on top if you factor in the GOP tax bill with their federal taxes. But I think that before we're talking about cutting Medicaid for seniors in nursing homes, We should be saying that the folks who are getting this immense windfall, who already are seeing the largest gains from our economy, from income going to the top, that they need to pay their fair share.
So a lot of difficult decisions to be made up at the State House, but wanted to bring you in again. Balancing being a rep and running for lieutenant governor, how's that going so far?
You know, it's been a crazy, fun whirlwind. Absolutely, I was a little late here, so obviously there's a lot to do. But as I've said, the opportunity to travel all around Rhode Island, to see folks in every city and town, to experience the wonderful spectrum of everything Rhode Island has to offer. I mean, it's something I've known, but there's nothing quite like every single night going out to a different city and town and talking to folks that you might not have met. So I'm having a blast, and certainly I get more and more optimistic every day with all of the potential that we have in Rhode Island. This is such a wonderful state. We have so much, and I hear it all the time from folks. We just need to be able to reach that potential. You know, we're always getting in the way of ourselves, stumbling over our own feet. Let's make sure we have a government that is speaking up for everyday Rhode Islanders, for folks who can't afford that well-connected corporate lobbyists, so that we can reach the potential that we have in this wonderful place.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come in. I know how busy you are, but it's going to be a busy week up at the State House next week. I'm sure I will see you up there, but I appreciate your taking the time, as always, to come here in studio.
Thanks for having me,
Representative
Kate.
Aaron
Great to see
Ruggenberg,
you.
Lieutenant Governor candidate. I'm going to let you go around the corner. I'm
Thanks
sure
a
you got
lot.
places to go.
See you later.
That just about wraps up another week here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. It's been a good one. We hope everyone is doing well. It is melting quite a bit out there, so if you're on the roads, planning on getting on the roads, give yourself some time. Be careful. It's going to be kind of a wet weekend with some potential for freezing, so stay tuned for GoLocal for some weather updates. And of course, more as well on GoLocalProv.com. We'll be back on Monday. It's MLK Day. We will be here in studio. So whether you're working, whether you're taking the day off in remembrance, we're going to be here with a lineup for you with Molly O'Brien at 3 o'clock, Josh Fenton at 4. So as always, we appreciate your tuning in to Go Local Live. We appreciate your feedback and wishing everyone a healthy weekend ahead. We'll see you next week. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagle.